Today on the show, we have the Senior VP of Advancement and Innovation at Southeastern University, a recent PhD grad in organizational psychology, and a professor of strategic management. Come on, we have Michael Steiner. Well, hey man, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah.
Welcome to the show.
It's good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, of course, man. Excited to have you on. Excited to talk about some of the things that maybe you've accomplished recently, but just also what's going on in your life.
Yeah.
Cold plunging is a main part of that lately.
Right now, you and me, we're in it.
We're at it, dude.
We are at it. We are cold plunging.
Well, you're definitely more of a pro at it right now, I'd say. I feel like I'm an occasional cold plunger at the moment when I can get over to your place.
Right.
But you're dedicated.
I'm trying to be. Yeah. I mean, it just makes you feel so good.
Yeah.
It makes you feel so good. And, I'm a little bit of a, obviously people are going to call me a hype boy for this and all that kind of stuff, but I don't care because it's true. It's good. But it's just, so yes, the longevity benefits. Yes, there's health benefits, all that kind of stuff. But for me, there's nothing better than just like, especially in the morning, starting off your morning and like, gosh, I'm going to sound such a hype boy, but doing something really, really hard for the first 3 minutes.
That's where I thought you were going with that.
Right. Yeah. Is like, yes. Like you come out of that, I'm like, okay, no matter what happens the rest of the day, I did that. I've literally been in meetings, like some of the hardest, like, budget meetings, all that kind of stuff, crazy numbers, all that stuff. And I'm like, I can do this. I literally sat in 40-degree water for 3 minutes this morning.
Yeah.
I can do this. This is not hard.
100%. And not to, you and I have recently both started CrossFit.
Yep.
And the number one rule of CrossFit is to make sure that you talk about it.
Right. Always.
So
always.
Here's us talking about it.
Yes.
But I do feel like
shout out Lakeland Athletic Club.
Incredible place.
Jared, my man, my inspiration.
Greatest coach.
Yep. Sorry.
Greatest
Keep
guy.
going. I had to do the plug.
But yeah, I like doing the cold plunge, getting in that. And also we could talk about this. It never gets easier.
Never.
I've done it. You've done it way more than I have, but I've done it 20 times. And I think 20-ish times. Getting into it, I just assumed, hey, at some point, I'm going to build up an immunity. Yep. It's kind of like coffee. Like the first couple cups I had me wired. After drinking coffee for a while, it just doesn't, really affect me. But dude, the cold plunge never gets easier.
Never gets easier.
But when I go and do a hard workout, I'm like, man, I already accomplished something really tough first thing of my day. This is easy.
Yeah. So I was on doing the other podcast, Framework Leadership, with Levi Lesko, and we were talking and hanging out. And he's in Montana.
Yes.
And so his cold plunge setup, he literally cuts a hole in the ice and is plunging in there. And I asked him, I said, dude, what's your record? And he looked at me, he looked around, and he goes, 13 minutes. I was like, crazy. No way. And so that's what I found.
What do you guess that's at?
What?
Degrees wise? What do you guess?
Oh, well, I mean, if you're talking the first foot is frozen ice.
Yeah.
So that's sub 32 degrees. Sheesh. So the water that you got to get down to at that level is sub 30. You're probably talking at you're sub 32, right? So you're in the 28s and all that kind of stuff. And you're in there for 13 minutes. And it's nuts. So with cold plunging, what I found is the first minute is always hard and it's the same hard.
Yeah.
But the tolerance you build is on the backside of it. So like when I first started cold plunging, 2 minutes, minute and a half, 2 minutes, I was like dying. Like you're just like horrible.
And your breath.
Right.
It's like
breath,
that is the first thing I noticed was just trying to maintain my breathing was tough.
Right. Yeah. Right. And I remember the first time you were in.
Yeah. The first time I jumped in.
Everybody's first reaction is to hyperventilate. They start going.
Yeah.
And you have to that's and that's what Huberman said is the biggest benefit of the cold plunge is forcing yourself in that 30 seconds to go.
Yeah.
I am calm. Even though your whole body's screaming at you to just hyperventilate.
I remember that. I feel like I have this thing about me that if whether it's like doing something like that, something hard, or if everybody's just watching me and I'm trying to accomplish something, I just have to talk. You probably noticed that about me.
Yeah.
Like I can't stop talking. I feel like it makes things like
it's very impressive.
less hard for me.
It's very
but
impressive.
That first time I was trying so hard and I'm sure I sounded crazy.
Right. You really learn a lot. Like when we did the Murph this year, again, shout out to CrossFit because again, and to be clear, we are not good.
No,
we're not good.
To be very clear,
we're not good. We're not
Murph
fit.
this year.
We split it.
We're getting into it.
Right. We split it, and you had to do my last set because I was so.
Well, you didn't
gassed.
have to tell them. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't have to tell them that, but I had. Listen, we're being honest.
There we go.
I just don't want to false advertise here.
Right.
But anyways, remember after the Murph, we brought all the guys over to do the plunge.
Right.
And you can see everybody's personality like just exposed. Like Jared is like he's just sitting in there like it's no big deal. He like dives under the water afterwards. Yeah. And you got Matt Kaminsky that were you and me are both like, Matt, chill. Matt, just chill. Just calm down.
It isn't it's a good point to bring. Matt, a great friend of ours, is probably one of the most fit dudes I know. Yeah. Takes care of himself so well.
Chiseled.
But it's not necessarily like the cold plunging thing isn't a like physical thing. It's just, it's so mental.
So mental.
It's so mental of just getting in there and saying like, hey, like that's what I have to tell myself is like, hey, this will be over.
Yep.
Like it's only 3 minutes.
Yep.
In 3 minutes time, you'll jump out. And kind of coming back to like what I can't imagine, like doing something like this in Montana.
Right.
Where it's like I go into sub-zero temperatures and then I get out and it's not that much warmer.
Right. We're in Florida. It's 90 degrees.
Right. We're getting out and it's
you get out, you're like, I feel great.
It's already humid. It's in the 80s. It's already warming you up.
He's getting out there and it's like 30 degrees still. Yeah. He had to get it naked.
What have you, so you've been doing it for a couple months now, right?
Yes.
Your setup is what? Maybe tell us a little bit about your setup.
So I have a homemade setup. Me and my father-in-law built it. So it is a galvanized tub trough with an ice pod chiller attached to it, and then water, and then wooden box isolated with kind of a piston suspension lid that kind of opens it easy. So very simple, very basic. Tubes connected in. We're not good at plumbing, so we did all that kind of stuff. Homemade, did it ourselves. And I like that approach. I mean, obviously, cold plunges can go insane. Yeah. And so that was kind of the most cost-effective way to still get something that's chilled.
Well, that's probably like middle of the road. Would you say? Like you can do you can do like a bucket and go grab ice every so often and try to get it as cold as possible.
Yep.
And then you can go out and get the full system.
Yeah. And I started with the ice, but honestly, I was spending $25 on ice every session. Yeah. So then I was like, I did the quick math. I'm like, okay, in like 2-3 weeks of doing these sessions, I could pay for a chiller. And that's like the most expensive part of the whole system. All the rest of it is like a couple $100 bucks.
Easy. Yeah.
So
you've been doing it. You've been doing this for like a couple months now. 4-ish days a week, right?
So I try and hit the protocol. Dr. Huberman, my boy. So the Huberman's protocol is 12 minutes a week. Yeah. So however you want to split it up, you could do one session of 12 minutes, or you can do multiple sessions of 3. He recommends like 4 sessions of 3 minutes. But the optimal is 12 minutes a week, and that gets you a couple different things. Number one, that lowers your inflammation. Number 2, it helps with the psychological, reducing stress, all that kind of stuff. And what's cool about it, if you've listened to the episodes, and if you're listening to this, you're a podcaster, so the chances that you've listened to Huberman is very high. So you know this. Yeah. But the protocol and the reason why it reduces stress is because what it does is it lowers your threshold, I believe, of what it was, or it increases your threshold for like base level anxiety, right? So so there's 2 kinds of anxiety. There's the acute anxiety when you're in a tough situation, and then there's the base level anxiety that we kind of all feel when you're, just general going through work, life, all that kind of stuff
every day.
And so what the cold plunge does is it spikes the acute stress so high that it forces the daily to be that much lower on the backside of it. It's because however high you go down. So like with we were talking earlier about the coffee analogy, right? Coffee or any substance abuse, the reason why you build a tolerance is because you spike high, right? And then it lowers the baseline. So then if you're tired all the time, the coffee. So it does that, but it does it to your stress in reverse. So you spike it high, so it lowers your baseline. So that's the way to do stress. So you do that. Supposedly there's testosterone benefits if you do it pre-strength training. So that's why I always do it before we go work out. Yeah, I don't do it after. And so there's some debate on that. I'm not a neurobiology.
But for the most part, you felt it more like mentally.
Yes.
Like as you go throughout your day, it's just like, man, things are like a little bit easier.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. You know, before, I think I just really started like doing it with you like maybe a month or so ago. Before that, I had done cryo chambers before just because the gym had that and tested it out. I think it's similar. Yeah. Maybe there's some difference because obviously you get in and it just drops down. Now, in some cases, that can drop down to like, I think it's like -200 or something like that.
Insane.
And but I think the idea is really the same, right? Like from my understanding, and this is, I may butcher it. You may understand a little bit more than I do. Part of what's happening too is like the blood in your like veins and your extremities is starting to journey towards your core to like protect your body. And then when you step out, everything flows back. Yeah. So like, I'm sure there's obviously the health benefits of that. Like we talked about this. I had some pain in like my fingers for whatever reason, just like 2 fingers. And after doing the ice bath, like pretty consistently, it's gone away for the most part. Like I barely feel it. I think there's something to do with that. Yeah. But also just like, I've also experienced like doing the cryo chamber or jumping into like the cold plunge is like you said, like the rest of my day just feels easier. Yeah. Dude, I sleep incredible. Like those nights. Yeah, I don't know if you feel that too.
No, totally. I totally feel that. I do that. Magnesium helps my sleep. And that's the thing. What's so fun, I feel like, about today, even so I feel like since Instagram has hit, right, we've all been trying to be healthy across the board and like all that kind of stuff. But like today with Huberman podcast and all that kind of stuff, there's so much good, practical, very basic information that you just gotta like try something, right? Yeah. Like if you just like get out there and just experiment for it, there's so many benefits you can have. And I think that's if you're listening to this, just try something. Like if you've ever been curious about ice bathing and you're in Lakeland, give Alec a call and have him give you my number and come on out. Would you try
Reach out. We'll have a big event at your house.
Right.
That's cool, right?
Right. Yeah. We do that. We'll wrap the line around it. I'll keep some Epsom salt in there so the water's clean and we'll just cycle it out.
You can honestly probably cut a little cover charge,
If it goes big enough, it
can go back into the cold plunge. Yes. New accessories, all kinds of stuff.
Yes. It's like, what's the opposite of like a house frat party? But it's like in your 30s, so it's like a house health party.
Yeah.
Right? We'll have some green drinks.
Yeah. Instead of like coming over to your house to rage all night, it's like we're getting there at the crack of dawn. Like make our day a little bit easier.
A little bit better. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Make us be able to cope with. That's exactly what we're doing. So
well, dude, obviously, like I love about this conversation. I think you're so right. I think that there is something to be said about getting up in the day. And okay, if you're listening to this and maybe you don't have access to like a cold plunge. Obviously, there's costs that go into building that out and making that happen. But just even the thought of like doing something that's a little bit difficult, maybe getting up like a little bit earlier, reading a book, going for a run, going for a walk, whatever.
Cold showers. I started with cold showers. Before I did the plunge, I said, okay, before I commit to a plunge and putting that money in it, I'm going to do cold showers. If I can do cold showers for a month, I earn my way to a plunge. So that's another good way to start.
I have some friends who I think like they swear by that. Like every shower they take, the last like minute or two, they just switch it all the way to cold. Let that, so like take your hot shower at the end, switch that over to cold. What it can do for you is pretty great. Yeah. Speaking of obviously like accomplishing hard things, you have accomplished a pretty difficult thing, I'd say, like in the in recent of getting your PhD, right?
Yeah.
Would you say that was pretty tough, or?
Getting a PhD is definitely it's tough. It's an accomplishment. For me, So I remember when I was a kid, everybody asked me, what did you want to be when I grew up? And I said, I always wanted to be a scientist.
Yeah.
I was fascinated by Bill Nye the Science Guy.
What a legend.
Dexter's Laboratory was my boy. Jimmy Neutron was my spirit animal.
Yeah.
I mean, I wanted to be.
I can also tell by those it's like how you age too. It's like
Right.
Bill Nye's probably elementary.
Right.
You know what I mean? Dexter's middle school or getting
right.
into
yeah. And then Jimmy Neutron came
Yeah,
out
yeah.
in early high school and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's what I was just like fascinated by. I was into it, all that kind of stuff. Problem is, I sucked at math. So your options for being a scientist when you suck at math are limited across the board. But I remember telling even like at the beginning of college, my parents were like, so what are your plans and all that kind of stuff? And I'm like, I'm just going to not stop and I'm going to go all the way through my PhD. So I only ever had 1 year of break of school, period. I just never stopped. And I think I was very blessed in that there was a lot of opportunities that helped kind of propel me forward and getting that kind of paid for. And so, that was part of the reason why I was able to do it, is that I didn't have to stop, but I just never stopped. I never went through it and all that kind of stuff. And so, it was hard, right? It was definitely difficult, all that kind of stuff, but I don't know how to explain it. It's not the same level, but you could imagine someone that's trained for something their entire life, accomplishing it across the board is just the fulfillment of everything you look forward to.
That's good. Yeah.
It was harder the first year after my doctorate. That was the biggest mind mess up I've ever had in my entire life. Yeah.
Like having the doctorate now what?
Now what?
Okay.
Like literally. And I told my wife.
Because you've been in school for a very long time.
My entire life.
How old were you when you graduated with your doctorate?
So I would have been 20, so 2020. No, 2021 is when I defended. So spring of 2021. So that was 3 years ago. So I would have been 29, 28.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm staring down. So I'm staring down 30. And I said, I'm really weird like this. I told my dad, I said, by the time I'm 30, I want to be married. I want to have children. I want to have my doctorate. That's what I want to do by the time.
Congratulations.
And I did it.
You accomplished all of that.
Unfortunately, I didn't plan after that.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm like, what am I? What do I like? Right. Every extra hour of my life up to that point had been school.
Yeah.
So like, I didn't even have hobbies. Like I never tried a hobby. I didn't know, what that meant. It was work, it was family, and then it was school. And so I was like the first year I was lost.
Like what do I do now?
What do I do? What I help? And so I started doing everything, man. I did a little Amazon FBA store. That didn't go well at all. We could talk about that and all that kind of stuff. I tried that. I got into doing some executive coaching for people. That worked really well. I've kind of found a little niche there. I started playing around with Dungeons and Dragons. I've tried to pick up golf. I mean, now I'm picking up CrossFit. I'm trying to do because it's just trying to fill that, because here's the thing is if you don't fill time gets filled with something. Yeah. And so what I immediately first, that time got filled with stuff that I was like, I don't care about this. Like, this is not how I really want to be spending it, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what happened to me after all that.
It's so interesting because I feel like there's something to be said there of like, even you like achieving the doctorate, achieving all those things that you set out to do. And I feel like some people can feel that way of like, man, like, what am I doing? I got to go like get a degree. I got to go do this or whatever. And it's like, no, that feeling is probably something that you'll have like a continued feeling throughout your life, right? Like we'll probably feel that again when we, reach the day of like, hey, talking about this, but like when our kids are, out of the house and into college, and it's just like, what now?
You're right.
Like you feel that same feeling again. And so being able to being able to acknowledge that with maybe just the understanding of like, it's not that there's something wrong with me. It's just like, these are seasons of life.
Yeah. And I wish somebody would have explained that then. That would have saved me from doing a failed Amazon FBA store. But also I had to get out of my system. I wanted to try it, right? So this, if you're sitting there watching all those TikToks and Instagram saying Amazon FBA is the great way to make super passive income. It's not.
How long did that last?
Oh, I spent a year working on that, and in one email, it all went to crap.
Okay, tell me about it. Yeah,
right.
are you okay to talk? Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, way
Okay.
good. I'm way good to talk about it. In one email, it all went to crap. So spent a year working on this thing, right? So literally we prototyped in China, going back and forth, doing an insane amount of research, right? So I'll say this.
Can I say I remember this because my son was the model for it, right? For
One
the
of the
pictures.
models. Yes.
I
Your
remember.
son and at the house, because you had bought my house, and then we went over to it and did all the shooting. Yeah. So it was awesome. It was a pop fidget toy. You guys remember when those are super popular?
Mm-hmm.
And I had done a ton of market research, like they said, right? Like literally, you can picture, if you've seen them, we've all seen them, right? The get rich quick on Amazon FBA, right?
Yes.
You go on the little thing,
It's
you find a
tempted me,
product, right? It's so
tempted
tempting.
me.
They make it seem so easy,
Right.
They make it seem it's not. So so a year of doing all of that hardcore research, all this different stuff, prototyping out of China. I'm shipping. I'm in logistics. I've got 3PL warehouses in Vermont. I'm tracking freights from China, all this crazy stuff. I'm feeling like it's awesome. And I calculate all my margins and all that kind of stuff. And when my product hit the Amazon FBA, I get it, and then it shows up. So the way, if you know how Amazon FBA works, they take a piece of the revenue to do all the processing, right? So your product is at the Amazon warehouse, and that's how it gets to be prime and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But they're doing all the packaging and shipping and selling it for you for a fee. And that fee is based off of how big and how heavy your product is.
Yeah.
Right. Now they give you all those fees ahead of time. So it's not a secret. It's not a surprise.
Sure.
It's just depending on what the category is. So I had built my whole product with us being around a specific category. And that category we would have gotten charged this level. And then when you factor in all the supplies, all the upfront costs and all that kind of stuff, this is how much I make. This would be my margin. And your goal is to aim at like a 20% margin.
Okay. Yeah.
So a 20% margin is what you want before advertising. And so we don't have to get in the business model, but just keep that number in mind, right? So Amazon fee would have been one thing, and it would have been 20%. Well, all of a sudden on my product, it's $1.50 higher. So because they miscategorized my product by height and weight to the next level up.
Gotcha. Okay.
So all of a sudden I go from a 20% margin per product to a negative 5% margin per product.
That fast.
That's that instant.
Wow.
I go to appeal it. They said, we do not take appeals on the system. Once it's in the system, that's what it is, period. And you can never change it. That's what Amazon said.
There was really like no way for...
Nothing I could do.
Yeah.
Nothing I could do. And if you know anything about manufacturing, the capital is spent up front.
Yeah. So you had them.
I had them. The money's already gone. And now I'm losing 50 cents every single one I sell.
Oof.
Gone, done.
Yeah.
Instant. Nothing I can do about it. One email. My whole FBA dreams shut down. And there's people listening to be like, oh, well, you could have pushed through. You could have done all this kind of stuff. And maybe I could. First of all, no one tells you about that in the Amazon FBA world. So you didn't see it. But for me, in my perspective, at that moment, I'd spent a year working on this. And I had this moment where I asked myself, I'm like, do I care? Like, how much, do I care about this stupid pop fidget thing?
Yeah.
Do I care about this product? Is this a product I really, really care about? And then I said, no, I did this to make money, and now I can't make money. And I've already burned a year of my life trying to figure this out.
So why burn the energy? Right.
Why keep burning the energy? And again, maybe that's the wrong perspective. Maybe that's not quite the entrepreneurial perspective, but this is the part about entrepreneurship that I don't think people talk about enough, is that money by itself will never be enough of a motivator. Or I should say this, let me rewind it.
Sure.
The richest people that you can think of right now did not do their thing to make money. They did their thing because they cared about the product or the service that they were doing.
Yeah.
Or at least they cared about the subject. They at least cared. They cared about it to be a deep.
I imagine they cared enough about it to be like, I could entertain this for years to come.
I could
like
push
this
through.
would interest me for a really long time.
Right. Even if no one paid me, I like this. I can move on. Right. So even like a Hermosi, Alex Hermosi, right? He's the one that's like, money is enough of a motivator. But even him, I call bullcrap, because he made all of his money in gyms, and he made his money on gyms after he had gotten himself fit.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
like, and he even tells you, I do 3 things. I do business, I do my family, and I'm in the gym. So like, you made your money. You say that you just did it because you care about the money, but you're lying to yourself because you made money off of something that you already cared about.
Yeah. I saw a quote from him today. I like some of his stuff.
I love his stuff. Just
no.
I use it in every
and
single class.
Yeah, not talking ill about it. I was, because obviously, like, for what I do for work, I'm in sales and tech sales and things like that. And somebody had shared him with me. And there was some quote from him today that you know what I mean? When you sit on a quote and you're like, it's going to take me a while to understand if I agree with this or not. He said something along the lines of, like, having muscles and having money can solve your problems. It's just that you will still have problems, but they become a lot smaller. Something like that, along the lines of like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that.
Right.
I get what he's saying, and where it's like, if you take care of yourself and if you grow wealth, that you have more resources to be able to fund some of this stuff. But I think maybe if we can try to circle it back to the point too, it's like what you like. It's being passionate about something that you want to be a part of. Too, right.
And passionate. I think you said it earlier. Passionate enough to solve the problems.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that money and muscles are the result of solving a problem in your life. And so that's why if you have money and muscles, problems always seem small, because the only way you got the money and the muscles is because you fixed a problem. So therefore, no problem can ever feel small again, because you have a skill set of solving problems. I don't know. That's how I think about it.
Well, yeah, and I 100% agree. I think coming back to also, I am a big proponent of, and I feel like this is simple, but I'm a big proponent of, you only have 100%. You know what I mean? Like, I get that there's motivational speakers that maybe say otherwise, but you have 100%. And that is across like what you do as, like, I'm sure for you as a husband, as a father, and then it goes to work, and then it goes to your hobbies, and then it would go to like your other business ventures and things like that. It's like, man, if this pop fidget thing is going to take up too much percentage in my 100%, then it's like, it's just not, it's not worth it right now. Yeah.
Unless I wanted to be the king of pop fidgets, right?
Yeah.
In which case I need to know everything about pop fidgets. I need to know everything about fidgeting, ADHD, anxiety. I need to be caring. I need to have like a passion, right? You know what I'm saying? If I had all that, like if I really thought my pop fidget would save something in the world that I was willing to go all the way in, then yeah. You know, and again, I've seen so many of the Amazon FBA gurus that are like, oh, you just cycle through products, right? And these guys will have shops where they've got a pop fidget, they've got a fishing lure, they've got a this and a that, and a doodad here and a doodad there. Yeah. And even to those guys, to me, what they have fallen in love with is the game of it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so even with them, they have a passion about the game, about figuring out the game. And for me, it wasn't the game I wanted to play. Yeah. And that's why I phrased it. I was like, look, there's only so many games you can play in your life. Is this one of them that I want to play?
Right. 100%.
And I decided that's not a game I wanted to play anymore.
And even coming back to that, I mean, obviously, like, and maybe circling a little bit back to you completing your doctorate as a husband, as a father. At the time you had 2, right?
I
had 2 girls?
I had 0 kids when I started my doctorate, and then by the time I was done, I had 2.
Okay.
Yep.
So, because how long did it take, if you're cool with talking about, how long did it take to complete the doctorate?
4 years. Solid 4 years. Yeah. Yep. So.
Wow.
Yep.
And so, like, kind of going through that, like, I'm sure there are people that would be listening to this that would say that's something that they've considered, right? Like, if you've maybe like you've completed your undergraduate, maybe you're into your master's, whatever the case may be. You're like, man, I could see myself doing that someday. I imagine typically the person that goes after their doctorate is maybe not in their 20s. I don't know. Like, maybe that's more rare. I don't know. But trying to go back to school, but realizing, man, I also have like kids now. I have a wife. I have other responsibilities. How did you juggle that?
Yeah. I just crammed it in. I mean, that's what I just did. Is I got up before the kid got up, and I did my work then, and then I stayed up another hour or 2 after, and and did my work then, right? So just think about like, and what I always tell people is close your eyes and think about any time in the last week and a half where you watched TV. So instead of watching TV at that time, sub it for doing work.
Right.
So that's where I put it. That's where I put it.
Yeah.
So for 4.5 years, I didn't watch anything, right?
Yeah.
I missed all of Game of Thrones. I missed I missed the last 2 seasons of House of Cards. Name
a show, you missed it.
Name any show from 2017 to 2021, and I missed it. I didn't watch it.
That's also like, it's probably healthy for people listening to realize, like, even whether it's your doctorate or not, like maybe cutting out a little bit of like TV time or show time at the end of the night and replacing it with something like my wife and I have just recently like really got into reading.
Yeah.
And for a season of my life, I was like super into.
We could turn
like,
this into book podcast so
dude,
fast.
We
Don't
might
even
go
tempt
there.
me. Don't
we
even
might go
tempt
there
me.
because you've gotten me on this topic.
Okay.
For a season of my life, I was like really into reading self-help, and I think it's great. Like I'm not knocking it.
Yeah.
I just got to a point where I was like, man, personally, I just kind of felt burnt out by reading like all these like self-help or like, books about business leaders or whatever the case may be. And I've been super into fantasy books. Like right now I'm deep into the second Game of Thrones book. And I'm actually kind of like, there's been a part of me that's been thinking about like tonight, I'm going back home and I'm getting back into that. And I'm like, dude, I actually haven't watched TV in a couple weeks.
Don't need it.
Like I have a few shows that I'll catch up with, but I'm behind on like a couple of the shows that I watch because it's like, I don't know, it feels, I know this is circling back to the health thing we started the whole show with, but like, I feel better. Like mentally, I feel better going to bed. Like I'm it's easier for me to fall asleep.
So much easier.
And sorry, I know we were talking about your doctorate and all this stuff, but
it's
fitting
great.
it in.
I mean, just on the quick sleep thing, as an aside, Tim Ferriss said there is no pill or no thing that you can do better than 10 minutes of reading before sleep. And specifically, if you can, 10 minutes of reading a real book by lamplight. Or if you're going to do the Kindle route, make sure you have your Kindle set to warm and set to dark mode.
Yeah.
Because you don't want that blue light. The blue light kills you.
Yeah.
Anyways.
But yeah. I feel like
I love it. I love sleeping. Yeah.
That is the point for me though. It's like I love the paper book, the lamplight. Like I'm staring at a screen all day long, dude. I want to get away from it.
Right.
You know?
It's a whole different part of your brain.
Yeah.
I love it. Game of Thrones is spicy.
Dude. It is. What I do, have you read that before too?
I've read the first 2 books. I was reading them before Eric and I got married.
Yeah.
And that was one of the negotiations of like, okay, I won't read these.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. I do know, like, obviously watching the show, there were a lot of moments where like Madeline fast forwarded it.
Right. You're like watching Eyes Closed. We all know that. Yeah. Right. All
what I found, dude, the first book I read like over a year ago. So it's been a minute. At least what I'm finding in the second book is there's a difference between what HBO like makes the scene feel like and what the book makes it feel like. So there are moments where it's like, oh, this feels weird, but we're not focusing so much on the action that's taking place. We're focusing more on like what that person's thinking. They're thinking about battle. You know what I mean? Like, how do I get back the Iron Throne?
Right. Which you just can't communicate via screen.
Yeah, and in that kind of moment, HBO, I'm sure HBO is not thinking about communicating that. Like it's all about viewers. Well, dude, maybe changing gears here a little bit. You are now the like senior VP of advancement and innovation at Southeastern, our alma mater, where we went.
Go Fire.
Go Fire.
Go Fire.
Crazy. I was literally telling somebody the other day, I was like, I love my school. I love where I graduated, love Southeastern. I wish that football would have been around a little bit longer. I think it was like my last year or two as I was leaving. I was like, we had just gotten it, but it's awesome now, dude, to see how the school has like grown, taken off, like the football program, all of that. But what I think is specifically cool is like, I know you've been working there since
my whole career,
16?
a whole career. So I started. So it was if you count being a GA, which was 2014 to 2015. So 2014 to 2024, right? 10 years. Yeah. Is all of all that. If you count the GA, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's been my whole career.
It's awesome,
so far.
man.
Yeah.
A GA to a VP. That's such a cool
senior
journey.
VP, yeah.
I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on, I think there are definitely some industries where maybe it does make sense to, like, for lack of a better term, like to jump around or whatever the case may be. But what's cool to see in your story, I think, is just the fruitfulness of longevity.
Yep.
Of just like working your way up into like a company or a school. Yeah. Maybe talk to us a little bit about like that experience for you.
Yeah. And again, everything I'll say I would not say is prescriptive, right? And I think everybody's got to do what you've got to do for your career and your move. And it's like we were talking about earlier, you got to think about what's your heart, and you got to think about what your game is, right? So I did not start out thinking I was going to have a higher education career by any stretch. Honestly, I started my first 2 steps out the gate were I did the GA, I did an MBA because I wanted to be a church planner.
Right.
I wanted to plant churches. And so I thought, okay, if I'm going to plant churches, I need to get an MBA so I know how to read. I know how to I did theology undergrad, MBA. So I'm going to do this.
Feels like it was
a
a balance.
Right. I feel it was for a year. And so it was for a year, and it was Erica's last year of her school, and we were engaged at that point. So I thought, okay, great, 1 more year, knock out my master's. It's what I wanted to do anyway. Yeah. Get this done. She's going to be done, and then we're stepping into the church world. And it's funny to me because I think the first 2 years, because after I was done with a GA, I kind of interviewed at a couple spots and things didn't quite pan out. And anybody who's ever been in a job interviews knows what that means and knows what that process looks like. Things just don't quite pan out. And so I got the work I was doing a lot of policy writing already for Southeastern at that point. So I wrote our Title IX exemption at that point. I wrote our human sexuality statement at that point. I did V1 of the new student handbook. So I was doing that. I was doing this kind of policy work writing that no one was doing at the university. And
it's a pretty big role for a GA spot too,
right? But it's all it's big responsibility, but you can also see how it's grunt work.
Sure.
I mean, it's like, hey, this really heady technical document that you got to go read all this. Why don't you go read it and take care of it? So I was like, all right. And actually, they didn't tell me. I volunteered. And that's, so I was an aside. If I could give you one nugget of advice, if you have no idea what to do with your career, this is something my dad always says, is go find the job that nobody else wants to do and do that job better than anybody else has ever done it before.
That's awesome.
If you do that, people will throw all the money at you for forever, right? So my career turned. I remember, I can tell you exactly the story where my career turned. I was a GA. I was working on some policy documents and different stuff. I wasn't even working on policy documents. I was just doing research for a project. I was a very traditional academic GA. Yeah. And the VP and their admin were talking, and I was in the office. I was there, and they were talking about how to respond to a parent email. Very simple, very basic. And they were killing themselves for 5 minutes over 4 words on how to respond. And when you're responding to an email to a parent, you got to be careful. And so I just sounded out and said, well, you could say XYZ. I don't even remember what I said. I just said, you could say this. And they both looked up at me and they said, you write the email. Yeah. And so I went over in 2.5 minutes, I wrote the email. Yeah. And you would have thought I brought fire down from heaven.
Genius.
Right. It's like, oh, this is. So then, I started, one of the things I noticed is that twice a year, this VP needed board reports done. Yeah. And always there was a little bit of a mad scramble coming up on it of like, oh, what do we need? How do we do all that kind of stuff? So I just started and none of this was in my portfolio. At this point, no one had asked me to do this. No one had stepped out. And so I just went out and I said, hey, I know board is coming up in a month and a half. You want me to start working on that for you? And they said, yes, please. Yeah. And so I would write it. I would do the whole thing. I'd sped it out, all that kind of stuff. And so then that led to a huge series of opportunities just because, and again, during this whole time, I was going to be a church planner. Yeah. Like to me, I was waiting for God to open up the door for me.
This was just what you were doing while you were waiting for the next thing.
While I was waiting for God to open up the door for me. And then, so all of a sudden I'm sitting and I'm now chief of staff because of all these different stuff. And all of a sudden I'm like, wow. And then chief of staff also then starts growing. And so when I'm chief of staff, I remember sitting in a leadership team meeting, and I'm not part of the leadership team at all. I'm the minutes boy, right? Like I'm sitting there, I'm taking the minutes, all that kind of stuff, silent on the side. And I remember president at that time says, I'm so sick of seeing all of these other colleges that are sister colleges getting grants from the Lilly Foundation and from the Kern Family Foundation. Why are they all getting grants? Why can't we get any grants from these places? Why are we missing this? What's going on? So I just looked up the website, and then there was a couple other things that happened. We got introduced to some players that kind of helped us understand the world of those two things, and I just picked it up. We didn't have anybody.
And just learned it.
I just learned what they were looking for, and I wrote my first grant, and my first grant ended up being the largest grant ever received by the university at that point, $2.1 million over 3 years. And I'd never written a grant before in my life.
Yeah.
And grant writing was not part of my no one asked me to be grant writer. That's not in my job description. That's not on my different stuff. And so, so I did that. Then I got another $2 million from the Lilly Foundation. Then I got another $4 million from the state of Florida. Then I got another, all that kind of stuff. And so that was kind of the most recent thing. And so that was all this advancement work that I was doing off to the side. And then with grant, what's crazy with grants is once you get a grant, then you actually have to do, like, they don't just give you free money. You have to do a project. So now I'm building this pastoral accelerator program, helping pastors become full MDivs in 5 years or less using the money. We're launching this Carry On Hispanic Leadership Center to resource Hispanic pastors. So I'm building all these programs, and not me. I want to be very clear. This is teams. I'm coordinating. I'm working with all the people. It's not all me. But what started as just president in a meeting saying, why can't we do this? And me saying, well, I'll step up and do that.
Yeah.
And so again, this is not prescriptive, but I'll say what has worked well for my life is being willing to do something that's not in my job description because it's a need that I see filled. And that's a dangerous line because you can get abused real fast, but it worked for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's so much good stuff in there. Like I've been in places before. So if you're listening to this podcast and like you felt like that, like it's not to like obviously knock anybody, because I felt like I've been in this place before where it's like you're at a job and for whatever reason you get into the rhythm of just like doing the bare minimum. It's like, this is my job, this is what they pay me for, I'm gonna clock out right at 5, and then getting maybe to a place a couple years down the road where you're like, dude, why haven't I advanced? Like, why am I not moving up? Why haven't things changed for me? That is like, I've seen that even with my current job now of just being able to be like, man, what's a need? It's like, yes, it may be a little bit more work, but it's also like helping not only like obviously the place that you work and helping you grow maybe like in your career, but also I think just helping you grow like mentally. And like something like I was going to say anyways in the show is like something I admire about you, and I think this is who you've always been, is you are a go-getter. And also what I love about you is like you are a researcher. Like I could drop any topic right now, like, and I feel like you've done some form of research that is like deeper than what I would understand. And like, it's good to have those qualities. Like it's great to have those qualities because I think it would serve you, like, and it's obviously served you like super well at where you're at this point. And just for anybody listening too, of like, man, I want to take the next step at my job or whatever it may be. It's like, yeah, look for that thing. Like look for that thing that's going undone or like could be a little bit better and go for it.
Yeah, I guarantee you there's 3 things on someone's plate. Doesn't have to be your boss, right?
Right.
It could be your coworker. It could be whoever, right? It could be someone in a different department. There's 1 or 2 things that someone hates doing that is so stupidly easy for you to do.
Yeah.
That if you would go do that, you would literally be a superhero to them. And that's all you got to be known for, is the person that's reliable and is the one that comes in and saves the day, and all that kind of stuff. And again, if you're, I I surf the web on leadership talk, and I'm kind of, because of my background and stuff, I'm in HR talk and all that kind of stuff. And 90% of the HR people will never give you this advice, right? Like if you're following the careerist people, they will never tell you to go the extra mile, to do the extra step, because abuse. I get it. There's been tons of people out there that went the extra mile and never got rewarded for it.
Yeah.
It's and I hate that. And we're not in a just society on any stretch of the imagination, but it's all what kind of game you want to play, right?
Right.
So, going job hopping to advance your career, which is what they say is the way to, they say the number one way to grow money in your career is to change jobs every 24 months, right? And every time you'll get another $10,000 increase every time you change.
Yeah.
That's what Career Talk says. And so I that's not wrong. That's mathematical, and that's a game to play.
Yeah.
And if that's the game you want to play, go for it. Go after it and get it done. I just found that the game that worked for me was what can I do with what I have? How can I serve? How can I do something that nobody else wants to do that's within my skill set so it's easy to do? And then how much can I endure, right? Because it's not all rainbows and sunshine, right? Yeah. There's a lot of pain that goes in with that you can't even articulate.
Yeah. And I know we're saying, like, obviously this is prescriptive. It's based on maybe your experiences, whoever's listening. Like, I feel like this circles back to almost like the Amazon store thing,
right?
Where it's like, hey, like this just didn't didn't add up for me. It didn't work.
Not my
for
game.
Me. Like, and it is a game. Exactly. Like it's a game to play, right? Like you can do the Amazon store thing. And man, if you're really into that game, somebody was telling me the other day of somebody who is full-time on that. Their niche is cleaning supplies on the Amazon game.
Yeah.
But again, it's a game, right? Just as like maybe if you're a day trader or things like that.
Or real estate, all that kind of stuff. And that's the thing is these are games you have to get good at.
Right.
There's no easy money.
And it's not to say that it's not like, I understand people make great careers out of this, like with the real estate game and all that kind of stuff. I think what I appreciate about what you did is that it feels like, to me at least, it was like more certain, man, like, hey, I am going to work hard. I'm going to be a great asset to this place. And I'm just going to see where this goes.
Right.
The scary thing for me of like playing a game is like, I could lose the game.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah. And we all still could. There's tomorrow's not guaranteed. Right.
True.
And at the end of the day, it's all what kind of what kind of game you play. But there is a level now, right now, sitting at an end of a 10-year career and realizing, hey, I'm a higher education mostly expert. Like I know more about higher ed than anybody other than the people I work with. Right. I'm not going to say that I'm the best at higher education, but like, you could put me in the room with the Secretary of Education, and me and him will talk everything there is to know, and I know all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You can't put a price tag on that level of expertise, that
100%.
mastery of something. And I just don't know if you get that same level of mastery changing jobs every 24 months. But I don't know. It's just what kind of game you want to play. I like that game on there. So,
well, dude, I've enjoyed this so much. I feel like you and I could chat for another 2 hours, and maybe we'll have to just do this again sometime soon.
Let's do it.
But we do have one more minute left. Maybe what's one thing you want to share with the people listening, whether it's something you or the university has something coming up or just something encouraging. Yeah, just whatever you feel.
Okay. So yeah, lots of great things on the horizon. If you don't know anything about Southeastern University, check it out. If you're looking for great graduate programs, check them out. Plug it. I've got to plug it. It's my school. It's
Go Fire.
They're doing all that stuff. Go Fire. All that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Have you? I'll leave. I'd like to leave it an entertaining note instead of an educational note. I've discovered a new. I discovered a new genre of music.
What's is it the throat singing? What is that again?
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. You're going to appreciate this. I hope you guys appreciate this. Hang on.
Give us a little bit of the scriptures, like some teas as you're looking for it.
Okay. So this is if you are if you think that music was the best between the year 2000 and 2010, you will appreciate this.
Yeah.
If that's where you think music was the best of all time, if that's where you peaked, it means you're old like us, but also you're not wrong. This is called Matthew, Mathieu. Hang on. You'll appreciate this. This is what I'm really into right now.
There we go.
It is. I just can't stop.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Dude, yeah. This is what I was listening to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Best
like driving to school in the morning, maybe. Yeah.
And I'm so glad it's back right now. It's like
this is back.
I only want my worship music to be gospel core now. That's it.
So great.
Yep.
Everybody go listen to gospel core.
It's
thanks for listening.
That's my last minute. Bye.
Well, hey, as we're getting close to the holiday season, it's time to start thinking about family photos. And if you're wanting to get family photos done in the Central Florida area, look no further than Drip and Grace. Drip and Grace is an empowerment brand that cultivates environments where you feel seen, known, and loved. Through the photography platform they have, they remind you that your story matters and they capture it beautifully. Be on the lookout for some incredible deals that are coming out for the fall and winter portrait sessions. And if you're interested, you can book your sessions by heading over to their website at dripandgrace.com or reach out to them at their Instagram handle, dripingracephoto, and you'll be glad that you did.